They had a friendship. Diddy was so confident enough to sit there on his desk, loose in every way, writing a personal letter to Trump because he really had hope. TMZ had their high contact links to confirm that this is what was going down, but unfortunately that wasn't the case here. 50 got the last laugh again. What a chess move for this man to basically make. Not only is he laughing in your face publicly by saying, what part of no don't you understand?
The internet didn't just react this time, it froze. Because when 50 Cent opens his mouth, it's never just noise. And this time the noise sounded like something powerful getting very uncomfortable. What started as classic 50-level trolling suddenly felt different. Sharper, almost surgical. And then the whispers hit. A rumored Trump pardon tied to Diddy that had been floating quietly behind the scenes. Allegedly shut down. No announcement, no denial, just silence where there used to be chatter. That's when fans stopped laughing and started connecting dots. Because this wasn't rap beef energy. This was politics, power, and pressure colliding in real time. The kind of situation where one loud voice can poison an entire room without ever naming names. And 50 Cent. He's loud on purpose. The timing made it worse. As soon as 50's comments started circulating, conversations around the alleged pardon mysteriously went cold. No follow-ups, no clarifications, just gone. And in the world of backroom deals, silence doesn't mean nothing happened. It means something became too risky to touch. This makes the Kardashians look boring, because this isn't scripted drama. This is real influence crashing into real consequences. Did 50 Cent actually stop something powerful from moving forward? Or did he simply shine a spotlight so bright that it collapsed on its own? 50 Cent has never been casual with his words, and anyone who thinks his online presence is just jokes hasn't been paying attention. Yes, he trolls. Yes, he laughs. Yes, he posts captions that feel reckless. But there's always a method hiding behind the madness. This time, the tone felt different. What started out looking like familiar 50-style provocation quickly took on a sharper edge, and the internet picked up on it almost instantly. The jokes didn't feel random. The timing didn't feel accidental. And when 50 Cent moves with that kind of precision, people stop scrolling and start watching closely. What made this situation explode wasn't an official headline or a verified report. It was the sudden disappearance of noise. Rumors about a possible Trump pardon allegedly connected to Diddy had been quietly circulating in political and entertainment corners for a while, never loudly confirmed, never fully denied, just floating in that gray space where powerful conversations tend to live. Then, almost overnight, that chatter went silent. No updates, no clarification, no pushback, just gone. And right around the same time, 50 Cent's commentary became noticeably more pointed, more intentional, like someone knocking on a door that was never meant to be opened. Fans immediately noticed the overlap. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Threads multiplied. Nobody was making firm accusations, but the questions were everywhere. And on the internet, questions are often more dangerous than claims because they allow speculation to grow without accountability. Did 50 Cent expose something too early? Did he amplify whispers that were supposed to stay behind closed doors? Or did he simply make the idea so loud that it became politically radioactive? This is where people underestimate 50 Cent's influence. He isn't just a rapper with opinions. He's someone who understands how attention works, how narratives shift, and how power reacts to exposure. He knows that some conversations only survive as long as they remain quiet. Once those conversations hit public timelines, they stop being opportunities and start becoming liabilities. Political pardons, especially controversial or rumored ones, rely on discretion. They don't survive viral attention. They collapse under it. As the internet reframed the story, the tone changed fast. This stopped being about entertainment beef and started feeling like a behind-the-scenes power struggle. People weren't asking whether the rumor was true anymore. They were asking whether the rumor had become impossible to act on because it was now public. In politics, perception doesn't need proof to cause damage. Once something becomes controversial online, Decision makers often back away not because it's false, but because it's loud. Diddy's name being attached to any pardon discussion already carried weight, and not the comfortable kind. With multiple controversies swirling around him in public discourse, even the idea of a pardon becomes explosive once the spotlight turns on. That's what made 50 Cent's role feel so disruptive. He didn't need to release documents. He didn't need to confirm anything. The attention alone shifted the atmosphere. Where people once joked casually, they were now debating legal optics, political risk, and damage control strategies like amateur analysts. One of the most telling aspects of this phase was the lack of aggressive denial. No strong public statements shutting the rumor down. No loud clarification to reset the narrative. Just silence. And silence online never calms speculation. It intensifies it. Fans begin asking why, if nothing was happening, the conversation didn't get shut down publicly. Why did it simply disappear instead of being corrected? In internet logic, absence often reads as avoidance, even when it shouldn't. This is where the story stopped being about a single rumor and turned into a larger discussion about exposure versus discretion. 50 Cent represents noise, chaos, and visibility. Political systems represent quiet, controlled movement, and risk management. When those two worlds collide, outcomes change without any official announcements being made. Sometimes nothing needs to be stopped formally. It just needs to become too uncomfortable to continue. The timeline shifted from laughing to theorizing. People weren't consuming drama anymore. They were imagining consequences. Could this attention have derailed something quietly in motion? Did 50 Cent intentionally force the issue into the open, knowing it would collapse under scrutiny? Or was this all coincidence magnified by an internet addicted to conspiracy? No one had definitive answers, but the impact didn't require answers to exist. What made this moment feel heavier than usual was how quickly it escaped entertainment boundaries. This wasn't blogs arguing over lyrics or fans debating interviews. This was political language entering hip-hop discourse in a way that made people uneasy. Pardons aren't supposed to trend. They're supposed to happen quietly, far away from memes and comment sections. Once they become content, they lose their protection. As days passed, the absence of movement became part of the narrative. The rumor didn't evolve. It didn't escalate. It just vanished. And that vanishing act made people more suspicious than any confirmation ever could. The internet doesn't trust silence, especially when it follows attention. Fans began framing the situation as a case study in how exposure alone can kill powerful ideas without ever naming them officially. At no point did this turn into a confirmed event. There were no official acknowledgements, no verified sources stepping forward to confirm or deny specifics. But the damage, if any existed, didn't need verification. It lived in optics, timing, and discomfort. In politics and entertainment alike, discomfort is often enough to change direction without explanation. By the end of this phase, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a joke that blew over. It was a moment that made powerful spaces uncomfortable. And discomfort has consequences even when nothing is proven. Whether 50 Cent intentionally torpedoed something or simply shined a light on something already unstable became almost irrelevant. The result felt the same. Silence replaced speculation, and the door that might have existed no longer looked open. This wasn't about proving a pardon was real or fake. It was about understanding how easily influence can reshape outcomes without leaving fingerprints. Sometimes nothing gets officially cancelled. It just becomes too loud to survive. Once the story slipped out of its quiet corners and into the open timeline, the internet did what it always does when it senses a power imbalance. It swarmed. What had been a vague rumor transformed into a full-blown pressure cooker, not because new facts emerged, but because attention multiplied faster than clarification ever could. This is how modern narratives explode. Not with proof, but with proximity and repetition. The first shift came in tone. Early reactions were curious, almost amused. People joked about 50 Cent trolling the White House, laughed at memes, and treated the situation like another chapter in his long-running reputation as hip-hop's loudest instigator. But then the jokes slowed. The captions got longer. Threads replaced memes. That's when the internet crossed the line from entertainment into investigation, Even if nobody had the credentials to investigate anything, reaction channels and commentators flooded the space, careful with their words but reckless with implications. Allegedly became the most used word on the timeline, usually followed by 10 minutes of speculation. "I'm not saying it's true," they'd say, right before mapping out exactly how it could be true. Disclaimers stacked up like legal padding, but the message still landed the same way. Something big might have been disrupted, and people wanted credit for noticing it first. What fueled the escalation wasn't confirmation, it was the absence of denial. In internet logic, silence is never neutral. Silence invites interpretation, and interpretation breeds certainty where none should exist. People started asking why no one was stepping forward to shut the rumor down cleanly. Why wasn't there a simple statement saying nothing was ever in motion? Why did the conversation evaporate instead of being corrected? Those questions spread faster than any answers could. Screenshots of old posts, interviews, and social interactions were pulled into the present and examined like forensic evidence. Context was optional. Timing was everything. The internet began convincing itself that patterns were emerging, even if those patterns were stitched together from unrelated moments. At the center of all this stood 50 Cent, seemingly unbothered, which only added fuel to the fire. His reputation for calculated chaos made people believe that if anyone could disrupt something quietly, it would be him. Supporters framed him as exposing hypocrisy. Critics framed him as recklessly stirring panic. Both sides agreed on one thing: his involvement changed the temperature of the conversation. Public reaction shifted from curiosity to anxiety. Fans weren't just discussing Diddy or 50 anymore. They were talking about power, politics, and the fragility of backroom processes. Once they're dragged into public view, pardons, favors, and political considerations aren't designed to survive transparency. They survive on discretion, timing, and controlled messaging. Once those elements are compromised, even unintentionally, outcomes change. The memes came back, but darker, less playful, more pointed. Jokes about deals dying in daylight circulated. Sarcastic posts hinted that some conversations are safer in whispers than in screenshots. Humor became a coping mechanism for uncertainty because nobody could say definitively what had happened, but everyone felt like something had shifted. Industry watchers added another layer of tension. Without making claims, they discussed hypotheticals, how public attention can make political figures back away, how controversy can stall decisions without any official explanation, how sometimes the smartest move is to let a topic disappear rather than address it head-on. These weren't accusations, they were observations, and observations can be just as destabilizing. The narrative began drifting away from the original rumor and toward a broader idea. That influence doesn't always require authority. Sometimes it only requires amplification. If enough people are watching, the risk calculus changes. Decisions that might have been possible in silence become liabilities in daylight. And that possibility alone was enough to keep the timeline buzzing. As the days passed, the story didn't evolve with new information. It evolved with new interpretations. Every lack of update became an update. Every quiet moment became confirmation for someone already convinced. This is how panic sustains itself, not through evidence, but through anticipation. People weren't reacting to what had happened. They were reacting to what might have been stopped. Even those who urged caution couldn't deny the impact. They argued that rumors don't equal reality, but they also acknowledged how damaging attention alone can be. In politics and entertainment, the perception of controversy can be enough to derail momentum. That's not conspiracy. That's history. By this stage, the story had fully escaped control. No single person owned it anymore. Not 50 Cent. Not Diddy. Not the commentators. The internet had taken over, building a narrative powered by repetition rather than resolution. And repetition has a way of making speculation feel solid. The most uncomfortable realization for many viewers was how little it takes to create this effect. No documents, no confirmations, just timing, visibility, and a loud enough voice to make quiet rooms nervous. Whether anything truly stopped behind the scenes became almost secondary to the lesson unfolding in real time. The timeline wasn't asking for answers anymore. It was demanding outcomes. Did something collapse? Did someone pull back? Was silence intentional? Those questions stayed suspended in the air, unanswered, and that suspension kept the pressure alive. By the end of this phase, the story had transformed. It was no longer about whether a pardon existed. It was about whether exposure alone can kill possibilities. And that question lingered, unresolved, heavy, and impossible to scroll past. Eventually, every internet storm reaches the same strange moment. The timeline slows. The same screenshots get reposted instead of new ones appearing. The jokes lose their bite. And in that quiet, people finally ask the question they should have asked from the beginning. What actually changed? Not what trended, not what went viral, but what shifted behind the scenes once the spotlight burned too bright. This is where the story stopped being entertaining and started being instructive. No confirmation ever arrived. No official statement announced a pardon, and no press release declared one dead. Yet the energy around the entire idea never recovered. The rumor didn't evolve. It didn't resurface with clarity. It simply stayed gone. And in power circles, disappearance is rarely accidental. Silence can be a decision, not an absence. What became clear was that the internet didn't need proof to create consequence. The attention alone had done enough. Political processes, especially ones surrounded by controversy, don't operate well under scrutiny. They rely on timing, discretion, and minimal public friction. Once something becomes loud, unpredictable, and meme-ready, it stops being manageable. Risk replaces possibility. In that sense, whether anything formally existed in the first place almost stopped mattering. The perception of a potential pardon, once exposed to mass attention, became too volatile to touch. Decision makers don't need certainty to step back. They need plausible deniability and quiet exits. And quiet exits don't come with announcements. 50 Cent never claimed responsibility for anything. He didn't confirm influence. He didn't take credit. He didn't escalate. And that restraint spoke just as loudly as his initial noise. By not chasing the moment, he let the internet argue on his behalf. That's a classic power move. Say just enough to spark attention, then step back and let the pressure build on its own. Public perception shifted subtly but permanently. Diddy's name didn't collapse overnight, but it became heavier in conversations that already carried weight. In the court of public opinion, accumulation matters. One more uncomfortable narrative, even if unproven, adds friction. And friction slows movement in spaces where speed and confidence are everything. What followed wasn't outrage. It was caution. Brands didn't issue statements. Politicians didn't comment. Industry figures didn't weigh in publicly. They didn't need to. Silence became the safest position. When too many eyes are watching, stillness feels like protection. The internet, of course, moved on to the next headline. It always does. But it didn't leave empty-handed. It left with a lesson it didn't fully acknowledge. Exposure alone can change outcomes. Not by force, not by proof, but by making certain paths too uncomfortable to walk openly. This wasn't cancellation. It wasn't confirmation. It was interruption. And interruptions matter more than conclusions in the real world. Careers don't always fall apart from scandals. Sometimes they get rerouted by attention that refuses to behave. Sometimes doors don't slam shut. They just stop opening. The aftermath also revealed something uncomfortable about online power. People like to believe influence requires authority, titles, positions, access. But influence in the digital age often comes from amplification, from knowing when to speak, how loudly, and when to stop. 50 Cent didn't need to control anything. He just needed to make it impossible to ignore. The narrative never resolved because resolution would require clarity, and clarity would require someone to speak. No one did, and that silence preserved ambiguity while still allowing consequence. The rumor didn't need to be true to become unusable. It just needed to be visible. For fans, the story shifted from "did this happen" to "could this happen again?" That's the lasting impact. Once people believe noise can alter outcomes, every loud moment feels more dangerous. Every caption feels heavier. Every post feels like it might cross a line that can't be uncrossed. This chapter didn't end with justice or injustice. It ended with discomfort. The kind that lingers in rooms where decisions are made quietly. The kind that makes powerful people double-check what's safe to touch next. The kind that reminds everyone watching that transparency isn't always welcomed by systems built on discretion. And that's the real cliffhanger. Not whether a pardon was stopped, but whether the internet just proved, once again, that it doesn't need proof to reshape possibilities. It only needs attention, timing, and someone loud enough to crack the silence. The timeline moved on, but the lesson stayed behind. Sometimes the most effective move isn't to expose everything. It's to expose just enough that nobody wants to move forward publicly. And just like that, the timeline does what it always does best. It makes noise, it applies pressure, and then it quietly moves on without ever asking who felt the impact once the screen went dark. No confirmations, no denials, just a trail of discomfort and a reminder that in today's world, attention alone can change outcomes. So now it's your turn. Did 50 Cent really disrupt something powerful? Or did the internet do what it always does, take whispers, amplify them, and turn possibility into consequence? Was this a calculated move, an accidental chain reaction, or proof that some conversations are never meant to survive daylight? Drop your take in the comments, because that comment section is where the real debate lives. If this breakdown had you leaning in, thinking twice, or realizing how fast narratives can spiral, smash that like button like it owes you money. Hit subscribe like you're locking in early access to the stories that don't come with clean headlines or easy answers. Because in this era, the truth rarely arrives first, but it always matters. Here at Truth Tattle,